everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome to Her Ascension Story, the podcast that proves the world is transformed by every hero's personal adventure. Here we talk about the real and the raw things that we should all be talking about more. Can't wait to share these amazing stories with you, so be sure to subscribe and follow so you can hear all about them as each new episode launches. Before I get into it, I just want to exude gratitude for you being here. I'm a little nervous. My voice might get a little shaky at some points, who knows? But I'm a lot excited for this new adventure of podcasting, and I hope that through this platform we can move forward together on our personal adventures. My hope is that this platform inspires you to explore and expand new empowering beliefs about yourself so you can make your own passionate impact in the world too. And those three pillars, inspiration, independence, and impact, aren't just the premise for this podcast, but for my work too. I'm a transformation coach and I help women ground down into themselves in a plethora of ways to unleash their power to transform their lives in the most meaningful ways possible. I love what I do because this is the way the world is moving now. The old ways of staying the same just aren't fulfilling anymore, and the world needs us to stand a little taller in our authenticity and our ability. And I'm so excited to see what sort of impact this podcast makes towards that. Podcast is a way of showcasing individual awakening and transformation stories that collectively make up and completely exemplify this massive ascension and transformation that the world has been going through. You hear it a lot in the spiritual community. The word ascension. And ascension is pretty much just a collective awakening. People have different theories about when this ascension started. You know, you hear about it started at the end of the 2012 Mayan calendar, or that it's just started recently, or that maybe it's not even happening right now and it's sort of more of an Armageddon situation in the world versus ascension. And my personal belief is that the ascension has started ever since humanity started. These transformations that I'm going to be sharing with you from my guests and my own personal stories, it doesn't have to be spiritual, but it is happening on a soul level. So what I mean by that is that these changes happening in the world, they are through the mind and they are being implemented and integrated into the body, but it goes so much deeper than that. I mean, look at your own life. Are you the same person that you were 2 years ago? Do you recognize the person that you were 5 years ago? How about 10 years ago? So you can even see in your own life how an awakening, an ascension, how a transformation has begun and has been being practiced in your life for so long already. Today, staying the same just doesn't cut it anymore to have a fulfilling life. And that might be ironically something that excites the holy heaven out of me. Growing up, I dealt with a lot of anxiety, depression, eating disorders. I experienced multiple traumatic brain injuries that messed with the chemical makeup of my brain so badly that suicidal thoughts flooded my mind, and I was even diagnosed with concussion-induced ADHD. That made going to college so hard, and the first year of college, I just completely went off the deep end and partied and drank and everything. And then by my second year, something just clicked. One of my greatest friends passed away in a drunk driving car accident, and it was kind of a defining moment for me. I wasn't practicing any kind of religion. I didn't consider myself spiritual at all. I didn't even have a connection or a relation or an awareness of God. I grew up Catholic, but I kind of abandoned all of that when I went to college. And in that moment, when I found out that my friend passed away, I just remember dropping to the floor, and I didn't even cry. I just looked up to the sky and I was just like, okay, I get it. Everything happens for a reason, God. Get me onto my path and let me do my work. And so from there on out, I still didn't really develop any kind of spirituality. I was just kind of living from my soul. And I know that some of you are probably going to be like, yeah, that's what spirituality means to me. But for me, it wasn't. And that's kind of what I want to show here too with this podcast. we don't have to define and label ourselves as spiritual just to have a meaningful life. Although having a meaningful life certainly does come from living with your soul, living wholeheartedly. That's a totally different topic for another day. But yeah, so I've been in unhealthy relationships, and I've gone through a divorce even. I'm only 28, and I know that's really young to already have gone through a divorce, but it's something that I completely own, and it's something that I'm actually pretty proud of going through. The lessons and the strength in themselves are complete gold to me, no matter how hard the process was. And even though it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, bringing myself back into my power was the most amazing, transformational process I have ever endured. And I do mean endured, not just gone through. It's not like I just fucking sailed through it. I endured it. And I wouldn't want it any other way. And to give you a little bit of background about my work, I knew from a very young age, maybe like 7, that I wanted to heal with my hands. Like, I wanted to help people feel better. And I knew that it was something to the extent that I would be using my hands. I remember my family would line up and I would give them like shoulder massages, like going down the row and taking turns. And anytime I would pet an animal, I would just be like, I love you, petting it, stroking it, and just like filling this animal up with like all of this loving energy to make it feel good. And I had no idea what I was doing, but long story short, I started seeing the soul level aspect of transformation in 2015, and that's when I met my Reiki teacher. It was a kind of a fluke thing. I went to this holistic event, the first one that I ever went to, just because I was really interested in what it could be. I've always been pretty open-minded. And I went and I was like walking by the tables and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, I'm not really sure that I'm like in the right space or anything like that. But I was about to walk out of this big, conference room where the event was being held. And one of the last tables on my way out was my Reiki teacher's table. And I don't even remember why I went over to her table, but we just stood there for an hour talking about all different kind of things. At the end, she was like, you know what, like, let's just stay in touch. Like, let's just contact me if you need anything. And so I took her business card and I went home, and later that night I pulled her business card out of my purse to put it in my desk, and I saw that she was a Reiki teacher, and I was like, ooh, like, I've heard about Reiki, but let me explore this more. And lo and behold, it was exactly what I wanted to be doing with my hands. It was just like, I didn't choose to do Reiki or to practice Reiki. It was just something that I felt like I had to do. Like, it just felt so natural. Like, there was pretty much no other choice. So I dove right in with it, and within 9 months, I had the 4 necessary certifications and trainings to become a Reiki master teacher. And with that, I moved to Sedona, Arizona, where I landed an amazing job as an independent contractor right in the heart of Sedona, right by the Verde River. My office had windows that opened and the river was right next to it, so I barely even had to play relaxing music, and all of my clients would fall asleep. I was doing Reiki and another integrative therapy, and I was doing intuitive readings, and I was really just kind of blossoming into my possibility or my potential of what I could do. I still, at that point, didn't feel like a direct calling of what I wanted to do, but I was just there, and I was willing to stay open and let any kind of experience come my way. So I'm really grateful for that. Just before I left, I started studying and training to be certified in life and spiritual coaching, just trying to get more experience under my belt. And soon after I started that, I moved back home to continue studying and training. And then I also started my very first business. A little lost on what to do next and what to do with the business, but at least I was full of new credentials waiting to be put to work. So when I came home, I pretty much just continued the healing and intuitive work I did in Sedona. I did it remotely and locally out of my house, and then eventually I worked in a yoga studio offering the integrative therapy. My most recent endeavor, probably the most exciting for me, was teaching mindfulness and meditation and global consciousness to kids in Clearwater, Florida. And it was so rewarding and refreshing because after a while of working with adults through integrative therapy and intuitive readings, there seemed to be a guru or a savior complex theme happening. People would come to me for a clean slate or wanting all the answers, and it made me feel so weird because I believe that it's our own personal adventures and it's our duties to find all of that within ourselves. And I'm not saying I never did that. I mean, I was totally guilty of going to my own Reiki teacher and saying, like, hey, I have this situation. What do you think is the best thing for me to do? And she would be like, that's for you to answer. And I loved how blunt she was. That was one of my favorite things about her. Blunt and honest and totally about giving me the perspective that only I could save me. Only I could have the answers. So my work now is all about giving the power back to women, or rather unleashing it in them, because it's always been there and that power can never, ever be taken away. And I love helping them become their own teacher and healer and everything else they need. And the amazing thing is that when they take the work we do together and actually run with it in their own direction, the impact they make on the people around them and in the world is brilliantly badass. It's fucking amazing, the things that we can do when we just totally rely on ourselves to the point where we know that there is nothing stopping us, that we have absolutely everything we need. Power, confidence, happiness, joy, the ability to overcome anything is already within us, and we just have to unlock it. And I know what you're probably thinking. The reason that people don't take risks in changing their lives or find the motivation to grow or to trust in all of this is hard. And they don't do it because it's hard. And I 1000% get that. I don't know how into astrology you are, but I'm a Cancer sun with a Scorpio moon. And if there's anything at all that I shouldn't be able to do, it's accept change. It can be really fucking hard sometimes for me to accept and allow change to happen in my life, no matter how positive or how beautiful it is. But what helps me break through that is asking myself, is this what you really want for your life? Like, really, really want? For nothing to change just because the process can be a little challenging temporarily? And if I think back to all the small and big times I said yes to my adventure and to change and to transformation, I can see how the only way I could help the people I've impacted so far in my life is through these transformations. Otherwise, I'd still be the same girl I was in college who was on the maximum dosage of Prozac, dealing with concussion-induced ADHD, and pretty much just not wanting to live anymore. One day we all end up on our deathbeds one way or another, and we're forced to look at what we did with our lives. Do we want to stay the same person for 60, 80 plus years? No. And I don't think it's actually possible for us to do that. Whether we realize it or not, we are always changing and we're always growing. And when we do it consciously and with wholehearted awareness and effort, that's when the real power in us gets unleashed and we can make anything in the world happen. That's the real paradigm shift. And I hope that this is what the podcast helps you with. Inspiring you to take control, giving you the tools to feel secure and on fire in your independence, and unlocking within you the impact that you're here to make. You're not born with a purpose. You are born as your purpose. It's already inside of you, and it's your responsibility to live that in the truest way your potential allows. Alright, I think I've started to make my point. Next week, my guest is Mariah Snow, one of my dearest friends and a massively powerful therapist who practices beyond quantum healing. It's a really interesting topic to discuss. Only the universe knows what all we'll get into that next episode, so be sure to subscribe and follow to find out. like I said, get ready to go deep with this stuff. We're talking about the real and the raw things. We're talking about being a part of the movement of being authentic and being vulnerable and being courageous and owning our transformation for ourselves and for the world, because there's no other choice at this point in the world. And if you want to connect more, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Her Ascension Story. Thank you so much for being here. I see you. I love you. Chat with you next week.